What should we expect from Arizona basketball and football in year one? How will that impact recruiting and possibly a little bit of Arizona baseball talk as well?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. This show is brought to you by Gametime. Let me find this. Okay, there it is. Check it out, Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. All right, now we are going to talk some Arizona and the Big 12. All kinds of really, really good stuff going on. But first, we are going to talk a little bit about where we see Arizona football in the big picture, not just the minutia. Big picture, where should Arizona be? And honestly, when I look at the Big 12, Kansas and Oklahoma out of the way, I get all of that. And while I think that those were especially Kansas and Oklahoma, Texas, well, I think Texas is a little bit of an overrated entity, or at least it has been historically. Those are obviously problem programs that are very good. They are out. Now, I look at the landscape of this conference, and I don't see why Arizona can't compete at the very highest level and why it can't compete at the very highest level consistently. So look at some of these other schools that are really good. And this is not a mark towards these other schools because, again, I think this conference is good. I very much resent the people that say that resent the opinion of the people that say that this conference isn't it's not good. Listen, you got 5 teams in the preseason top 25, period. That's good. So let's talk about some of these teams and where they kind of stand big picture. Utah is obviously very, very good. Utah, as long as Kyle Whittingham is there, is going to be fantastic. And I don't see any reason that Utah won't continue to be very good as long as Kyle Whittingham is there. This is the epitome of a coach in a perfect situation. And not only is he in a perfect situation, he's in a spot where I think that it's fair to say that he is he's pretty much good to go, and I think that this fan base absolutely eats up what he does, and rightfully so, because he's very good at what he does. And he brings that tough, physical, hard, I almost said hard-mouthed approach, tough approach to things, and I think that you watch him and you just know that as long as he's there, they're going to be good. And I think that this is a program that should be good because, again, remember, Urban Meyer was there before him. Urban Meyer obviously is one of the best coaches of all time, but you can win at Utah. As long as they have a good coach, I believe that you should win. The blueprint is there. Now, Kansas State's another one. Kansas State, now again, these programs might be like not national top 5 potential teams, but these are all top 20 type potential teams. Kansas State under Bill Snyder was a top 5 to 10 program. I've long maintained that Bill Snyder is the most underrated coach in college football history. What he did at Kansas State, I think, is absolutely otherworldly. It's astounding what he did at Kansas State, and he was like I said, he was very, very good. And he was a dude that, I think he did it the right way. I think his players liked him, and he was able to, win that way where you get JUCO kids, where you get, under the radar players, and he was able to turn it into. I mean, you look at your Michael Bishops, you look at your L. Robersons, you look at your, your Darren Sproles, players like that. The dude just got it. And again, when you've got 3 top 5 finishes in a row or something like that, and 5 or 6 top 10 finishes all time in Manhattan, Kansas, you're a boss. Chris Kleiman done an amazing job there as well. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to keep him, but as long as he's there, they're going to be good as well. Then you also look at Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy is the man. Mike Gundy is, I think, one of the top 10 coaches in college football. He's done an amazing job there. Oklahoma State's generally in the top 25, and every third or fourth year they have a really, really good team that's top 10 type. And then obviously Kansas under Lance Leopold, he's done a really good job. And you got some other programs as well, like a Cincinnati, schools like that, with Dilly maybe. He does a good job at ASU. But the point is this, is that Arizona should absolutely be able to be amongst those. And I believe that Arizona should absolutely be able to be competing at the highest level of the Big 12 consistently, because there's nothing really that these schools have that Arizona doesn't. It's not like one has this, this marked history of, top 25 finishes or putting players into the NFL that Arizona can't compete with. That's just not the case. And so Arizona, I think you've got to look at and say, all right, there's a real potential there for the Wildcats to, I think, continuously be good. Like in the old Pac-12, there was always a certain amount of schools. As long as if USC had a good coach, USC was always going to be better than Arizona, and they should. It's one of the most storied programs of all time. It's in the middle of a talent hotbed. There is no reason that Arizona should be better than USC if Arizona had the better. If Arizona, was on equal footing as far as like coaching and stuff. Oregon is obviously on a new plateau now with Dan Lanning, the Nike money. You've obviously got Chip Kelly, Mike Bellotti. Oregon, and to a lesser extent, Washington, are schools that Arizona was probably, if all things are equal, is never going to be able to compete with consistently. So those are three right there. But, that's about it. But there is none of that in the Big 12. There is no school that you're like, man, there's just no way that we can compete with them. And I think that's something that's got to be very, very enticing. It's got to be very interesting, too, if you're an Arizona fan, to look at that and say, man, we can compete with all those schools and we can compete with them at the highest of levels. And I think that's something that, from an Arizona perspective, you got to really embrace, because it's not something that you're able to see every single day of the week. And that is I think that's obviously a very good thing. But Brent Brennan, he comes in here he's shown a style before at San Jose State that showed that he knows how to win football games. And he knows how to really find under the radar talent. He's really going to have to do that here at the U of A, though. And he's going to have to continue to do that, what he's been able to do, and he's been able to win football games by finding under the radar talent. This year's a little bit different. This year, like I said, and I'm getting my boy Adam Prim some love on this, it's got to be a go for broke year though for him. This is I know it's your first year, but you've got a loaded roster from the quarterback to the wide receivers to the running backs. I mean, the offense is absolutely loaded, and defensively, I think it's more than good enough to be able to be competitive, to be able to be something where Arizona is in a spot that should be able to compete. Again, look around the Big 12. Shedeur Sanders and Avery Johnson get a lot of love. I get all that. I'll take Noah Fafita. Teteroa McMillan is the best wide receiver in the conference. He's also probably the best player in the conference. On the defensive side of the football, I'd be curious if there's any better players than a Jacob Manu or a Takario Davis. These are next level type elite level players. And Brent Brennan, I think if you go into the Big 12, you got to be able to show in year one that, man, Arizona's not going to miss a step, because it shouldn't miss a step. This is a good team. As much as I don't like Jedd Fisch personally, Jedd Fisch left a lot of talent behind. Now, granted, he tried to poach it back to Washington, but it didn't work. And that's a testament, I think, to these kids. But Arizona should be able to be very, very good. And from a recruiting perspective, you should also be able to get into Texas. You should be able to and still be able to get California. I think what you're going to find with Brent Brennan is that Brent Brennan is going to recruit he's going to recruit California, at a level that we haven't necessarily, at a different level. I think he's going, obviously Jedd Fisch did a very good job with California, with Southern California. I think you're going to see Brent Brennan really kind of dig into those Northern California roots. And I wouldn't surprise me at all if he's able to consistently get some pretty good players from there. You've already seen that, I think, with Kern. You've already seen that with McDaniel in those 2025 commits. And I think you're going to continue to see more of those. So that's something that's obviously very, very good for Arizona. But the recruiting template is there. And when I look ahead, I don't see any reason why Arizona can't compete at, like I said, at the very highest of levels in the Big 12. And with the way that the seeding is, I think that the Big 12 is going to be something where Arizona can, rightfully look ahead and be like, okay, There's no reason that we can't win. There's no reason that we can't compete on a regular basis. And here's the thing, if you're consistently good on a game by game, season by season basis, kids want to start coming there more. That's just no duh. If you know that a program is going to be consistently good, guess what? You're going to have more interest in going there, period. All right. One other thing too, that you're going to have interest in is Gametime. Now, listen, this isn't going to be like the Pac-12 where you're going to these cities and there's going to be nobody in the stands. When you go to these Big 12 cities, these are college towns. So download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply, my friend. Terms apply. The big cool thing about the Gametime app, though, is that you can not only use it for sporting events, you can use it for football tickets, you can use it for a smorgasbord of opportunities. But again, check it out, the Gametime app, another one of these ones. You will thank me later. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, let's talk a little bit about Arizona basketball. This is a different animal because where, the Big 12, I think, is a very underrated yet solid conference. I think the the Big 12 in basketball is the best conference. This is, I think, the new ACC. Remember back in the day when it felt like Duke, North Carolina kind of ran everything? Well, I think now obviously there's a little bit of a difference with where we're kind of at with everything with these conferences. And the Big 12, all you got to do is look in the preseason rankings, and you can see that there's going to be 5 of the top 10 teams in the country in the Big 12, and Arizona is going to be that 5th team. Granted, they'll be in the top 10, but they're going to be that 5th team. So look, Kansas is Kansas. Kansas takes a backseat to absolutely nobody in college basketball historically, or with Bill Self. I think you could probably make the case. I mean, maybe Danny Hurley as well is in there. But along with Danny Hurley, Bill Self is the best coach in college basketball. He just is. From a consistency perspective, from an ability to be able to get players to, excuse me, from an ability to be able to get players who are 5-star players. He can get his Andrew Wiggins, he can get his Josh Jacksons, but where he really makes his killing, though, is on the players like the Frank Masons, the Devontae Grahams, your under the radar players. I mean, I think Devontae Graham was committed to Appalachian State, and Frank Mason was committed to George Mason. Those are the type of dudes that have been his front level players that have been really kind of pains in the butt. Now, again, he's gotten the 5 stars. That's not what I'm saying. He's got a lot of them, but he's been able to sprinkle them in, and his player development is top notch. I mean, you always hear rumors about him going off to the NBA. I don't see it. I think he's a college lifer. I think he wants to leave his imprint in college basketball as one of the handful of best coaches to ever grace a college sideline. And I think he's well on his way. He's got 2 national titles, 4 Final Fours. And I would guess he probably finishes with another national title or 2 because he's got everything. He's got Kansas rolling, and they're going to be the preseason number 1 team in the country this year. They've got all the resources, obviously, to be an absolute monster. And I watch them and I'm thinking to myself, man, that is a problem, and Kansas will always be a problem. So you got to remember that. Then you look at a school like Baylor. Now Baylor's obviously more coach specific because Scott Drew is very good. Scott Drew is also a coach who is, again, Baylor was nothing before Scott Drew came there. I think you can make the case that Scott Drew is one of the handful of best coaches in college basketball because he's kind of got that Bill Snyder thing going on. Went to a school with absolutely no history, no tradition, and he kind of turned it into a powerhouse. Turned it into a place where you could go and you could win national championships, and not only win national championships, get players from all over that wanted to come to Baylor. Again, Baylor, that is the wild part about all of this, is that he was able to get players that would want to come to Baylor. So he is as long as he's there and he's young, or is fairly young, so I have no reason to believe that he's not good, that he's going to leave. they're going to be in pretty good shape as well. So that is something to definitely keep in mind. Baylor, Iowa State, obviously you don't worry about, but Otzelberger's done a good job. As long as he's there, they're going to be good. They're very coach specific. Houston's fascinating because with Kelvin Sampson is another one who's one of the most historically underrated coaches. Had he not got caught cheating at Indiana, might have had multiple titles by now. He's that type of coach, but he's at Houston. He's an older dude, but he's got a young soul. And you can tell by just watching him coach that it's another guy that just kind of gets it. Players want to play for him. Players want to be around him. And there's a reason why, because he's really good at what he does. And you watch him and you're like, man, I could see it. And he runs a fun style. But Houston in this conference also has a little bit of an advantage going for it in that it is you're now in a major conference and you're in Texas. A lot of talent in Houston, a lot of talent in Texas. And a lot of these players that want to get up and down the court, they want to run, they want to be able to do a lot of different things. You can do that at Houston. You can do that with Kelvin Sampson. Again, Kelvin Sampson is the man. He's a really, really good coach. I'm not breaking any news there. But Arizona, maybe outside of Kansas, takes a back seat to nobody. You've got your coach for the long term in Tommy Lloyd. Now, I know there's some frustration, and rightfully so, with Tommy Lloyd's postseason play because the team, let's just be honest here, the team hasn't played as well in the postseason, and they've been kind of soft, kind of the way it is. But you look at his first 3 years, and I don't think that I don't think that you could say that, man, this guy hasn't been a wildly awesome hire, and I think that he's going to continue to be that. I think that he's going to continue to learn. And what I like about Lloyd, and I've said this a billion times, Muehlbach made this point, and it's a great point, is that he continues to take inventory of where this program is. He makes decisions that he needs to be able to make, and sometimes those aren't easy. I mean, I think he legitimately liked Kirk Risa, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he not only did he like Kirk Risa, he also liked Kylan Boswell. But these guys weren't good enough for a variety of different reasons, and they were kind of showing the door. And you bring in Jaden Bradley, bringing a little bit more of a toughness factor. I think you got KJ Lewis. He's going to be able to get players. He's going to be able to get 5-star type kids. He might not recruit at the Sean Miller level, but he's going to get the players that he wants. And I don't see why he can't be every bit as successful and probably more than Miller, because I think he's a better coach than Miller. But Arizona is going to be in the thick of things. And at this point, Arizona is also a 3-coach school. And that's something that I've always got to give Sean Miller, is that Sean Miller made Arizona a 3-coach school. You look at Georgetown, you look at Maryland, you look at all these different places, and you know that you'll be able to get another coach. And that is something that I think is very, very enticing if you're a program, is that you're not Georgetown, you're not Maryland, you're not UNLV, where, man, it was probably more about the coach than the environment. At Arizona now, you got Lute Olson, you got Sean Miller, you got Tommy Lloyd. I know Fred Snowden did stuff back in the day. Totally, I'm not dismissing that, but I'm talking about guys in this new era that have been able to win and have been able to get their teams to be ranked number 1 in the country. That's kind of where we're at with that. So be that as it may, Arizona is going to be just fine. And when you look ahead at the future of Arizona, you also know that there's no reason that Arizona shouldn't continue to be really, really good. I think that's something that's also very exciting about this, is Arizona can be as good as Arizona wants to be. And I think going to the Big 12 is actually going to help the team out a ton come tournament time, because I think there was way too much sleepwalking, especially with Lloyd. I think with Miller's, when Miller was really going, I don't think there was much sleepwalking, because I don't think that his personality would really allow it. But Lloyd is obviously a more laid back, kind of lets his guys do his thing. You're not going to be able to do that in the Big 12, because if you do that in the Big 12, you're going to get embarrassed. And that is something that obviously we do not want to see. But in the Big 12, there might be some bumps. Arizona might finish 3rd next year. They might finish 4th, but that also means that they might still get a 3 seed, something like that. So you got to really keep that in mind. But overall, I expect Arizona football and Arizona basketball to acquit themselves very well. And again, this is for drastically different reasons. But again, I think Big 12 football is underrated, and I think Big 12 basketball, it's rightfully looked at as the best conference in the country. And I think with the inherent the inherent strengths and weaknesses of both programs, they're going to be able to adapt just as well. Now, let's talk about some of the other stuff here in a second. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now, let's talk a little bit about kind of where you see some of these other sports going. Arizona baseball, we talked about it yesterday. Arizona baseball should always be good. Now, maybe it'll help you a little bit in the Big 12. I don't know as far as being able to recruit, but between them and Arizona softball, this isn't the days of Candrea and Jerry Kindle. It's going to be a little bit more different, but you're also going to have to figure out, are these the right coaches for the job? Now, again, Chip Hale just won the conference and he was the coach of the year. So I think it's very difficult to say that he's, you can't just get rid of Chip Hale. But I think with somebody like Caitlin Lowe, you got some real questions. Now, listen, this was Mike Candrea's handpicked successor. I'll get people all the time that are like, well, Hickey shouldn't have allowed that. Any coach, any AD in the country is going to hire the coach that the best softball coach in the world history wants is there. So again, missed me with that. But so far, Caitlin Lowe has not inspired much, and she has not shown that she's able to get pitching. We'll obviously continue to see that. But overall, I think Arizona is very, very well positioned in the Big 12 to be able to continue to win in both the revenue sports. And this is a big part of this is going to be on Brent Brennan, because again, I think Tommy Lloyd is going to be just fine, but I think we're going to find out a lot about Brent Brennan immediately. Is Brent Brennan able to make, some of the tough decisions? Because again, this can't be a team where you go 7-5. This team's got too much talent. You're not going against the SEC East. This team just has too much talent to be able to not be where they need to be, I guess is my point. And I don't know that you're going to get better players than that. So offensively, if the offense isn't good, then that's going to lie right at the hands of Dino Babers. There's no other way to put it. The offense, there's no reason that the offense shouldn't be really, really good from day one. Again, it's on them to be able to shore up the offensive line, but you've also got 4 offensive linemen already that are good. So you got to be able to keep that. You certainly got to be able to keep that in line. And then with basketball, obviously, I don't care what conference Arizona basketball is in. They should be able to compete at the highest of levels. They're going to be able to recruit at the highest of levels. And you also got to understand, too, they're going to be able to get transfer portal players when they need. So, and you got a coach that's locked in for the long term. I imagine you've got some pretty good coaching stability as well, which is something that I think is very, very important going forward. But again, there's been times in the past where you're like, man, the stability on this program just isn't great. Right now, I think you got some pretty good stability, so we will continue to find that out. All right, but now we're going to have some player breakdowns then these next couple of days. We're going to talk about maybe some statistical expectations of where, certain players will be, and what exactly we're going to think. And we're going to have a little bit of NBA Finals. Might have some NBA Finals talk as well. You got Josh Green in the NBA Finals. Very, very cool story. And, who could be some of those next players that are coming up down the line as well. But, again, always, never a better time to be an Arizona Wildcat fan. I know that we're a little bit bummed about some of the postseason performances, but overall, Arizona, I think, has done a very good job, and I think it's impossible not to be excited about the future and where things are headed. We are in a really, really good spot. So, again, we're going to be back with you tomorrow, but as always, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will see you tomorrow.